James Harden to Houston, those rumors have been floating around for really the entire NBA season, because James Harden's contract with the Sixers is going to end this year. He's going to become a free agent, and he was expected to look for a new deal. And that's what's happened, and those rumors just continue to increase once this offseason hit. And just this week, the Philadelphia Inquirer reported that James Harden will be leaving the Sixers and will join the Houston Rockets in free agency, which pretty much solidified those rumors and really increased the talks. And it's really an interesting situation. I did not think James Harden would ever want to come back to the Houston Rockets, but especially as a Houston Rockets fan, I thought both sides had really moved on. But here we are, and he had an incredible 8 seasons here in Houston from 2012 to 2021, but he just couldn't get that ring, and he just really decided to force his way out of here, which really bothered some Houston fans because it was pretty unprofessional. He made himself unfit on purpose and said a lot of stuff, and he just left and went to the Nets, and he got traded to the Sixers, and he just had another disappearing act in a critical Game 7 with only 9 points, 3 out of 11 shooting, 5 turnovers. He did have 2 game-winning shots in Game 1 and Game 4, 45 points in Game 1, 42 points in Game 4, but in those super important moments, he just doesn't come through, and I just don't think he'll ever do it. And I think honestly he just might have moved on, and I think that may be one of the reasons why he's willing to come back to the Houston Rockets, because this team isn't going to be competing for a championship really anytime soon. You have a new head coach, you have a lot of young talent on this team that he can lead to the playoffs, so that's really about it. And the player that the Houston Rockets, if they were to be getting James Harden, he's not the same player that he was during those 8 seasons in Houston as an MVP scorer. He's only averaging 21 points per game these past 2 seasons with the Sixers, and he can't score as effectively as he used to, especially during that 2017 MVP season. Really 2017, 18, 19, where he averaged well over 30 points, and I think he's a really, really great passer and a good point guard. So this is where the Houston Rockets would be really benefiting off of James Harden, where I think he would be a good fit for this team, assuming he does want to play for Houston. And, if his mindset is right, I think this could be a really good fit. And there are a couple other things that, I would be concerned about, whether that's, the money and, what he specifically is looking for. But, in terms of the player that the Rockets are getting, as a point guard, as a facilitator, someone who can help them, I think, yes, he is good, and he is the best player available for that position. And it's really something the team needs. They need someone to, pass the ball and put these young players in position to succeed. And, it does seem like there's mutual interest for the reunion. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. I think Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta is very high on James Harden, and he likes him. And Harden and Fertitta was like, if you ever want to come back, you're more than welcome to. And I think that's what's going to happen again. And I think Harden is fond of Houston. He likes Houston. We know what he likes here in Houston specifically, but he's made a lot of community impact here. Has his restaurant here. He spent so many years here, and just put the young players in position to succeed. Put them in those bigger, meaningful games, and get them that kind of experience, before he goes. I'm all for it in theory, but there are a lot of things that potentially could not work. There are a lot of fans, Rockets fans specifically, that don't want him here because of those stereotypes on him, that he's a ball hogger, that he's a bad teammate, that he won't share the ball, he won't help the young guys. I think he's a distraction. I think some of this is true, some of this is not, because I don't think he's a ball hogger, and he won't share the ball is definitely an incorrect statement, because this guy, he led the league in assists this year with 11 this past season. You don't lead the league in assists and won't share the ball. Like, that just doesn't add up. So there's really no one better at this position right now for the Houston Rockets that is available. And he's averaged over 10 assists for the past 3 seasons. So, he is a more than willing passer. He's a great passer. This is like one of really the most underrated things about James Harden, is that his passing ability. And really, you've seen it in these big moments. He loves passing it to his teammates in the biggest moments. We know that, in these playoff games, he's not going to put on himself to score in a Game 7. He's just going to pass it out. And I think that would be really helpful to a guy like Jalen Green or Kevin Porter Jr. hitting those spot-up threes, and him and Şengün could be really lethal. So that's what I'm looking for. But really, the most important aspect of this is Harden working with the younger players, and he did that during last offseason, where Harden was also in a good shape physically. And according to reports, he has high praise for the group, specifically Jalen Green, and that's really what is important. What role is he going to be playing for these young players if he does come back? And the two things that concern me, one are the conditions that were placed with him. If you read the article on the Philadelphia Inquirer where they said he's going to come back to Houston, he wanted a competitive roster and the ability to be himself. I don't know what that means, but one, I don't think he just cannot be lazy. He has to be a positive influence on this group, and if he's going to come back, I'm pretty sure he's going to do that. And two, he just cannot keep partying in those clubs as a little baby. He's got to move on from that. Like, seriously, that's not a good influence. And the Rockets don't have a competitive roster. So those two things, I'm like, why would he want to come back? I mean, if he does, then if there's mutual interest, then there's chances of this roster really changing here in Houston. Maybe you add in Jaylen Brown and you become a contender. So it's hard to determine, but the other thing was money. He wants a max deal of 4 years, $200 million, which is what was rumored. And he was only offered $34 annual for 2 years with the Sixers, but now he wants $50 million as an even older player at 33 years old. So I don't know. Sixers can't offer as much as some of the other teams, which is why James Harden would be willing to walk away because of this new, bargaining agreement. And he wants money over a ring, I guess, at this point. And that's what the Houston Rockets, I guess, can offer him. That's a lot of money, and you're taking up so much space with all that money, especially for those rookie contracts, because eventually you'll have to pay Şengün, you'll have to pay Jalen Green in 2025. So 4-year deal from 2023, that's pretty tough, to give. And they might as well spend it. That's what Fertitta might do, but I'd advise against it. I'd be willing 2 years, 90, 95 million, somewhere around there, max. And, otherwise you're just going to have to stick to the draft. Otherwise, I don't want Harden back here. Otherwise, you're just going to have to stick to the draft, use the assets you have to potentially get Scoot Henderson as a point guard. If not, get Amen Thompson, then spend the money to try and get Jaylen Brown from Boston, who's also going to be a free agent and available as a much younger guard at 24 to 26 years old, who is super talented, can come back to his coach Ime Udoka as well. So speaking of Ime Udoka, if Harden does come back, that's what I'm really curious about, what Harden's fit is going to be with Udoka here as head coach. Ime is certainly going to have the right system in place for these guys. And I think Harden can fit in well as long as he's willing to and put in the work and not be lazy. Because Şengün is going to be used as a facilitator, as a big man in the center to get things done. And that's what he should be using. And KPJ definitely as a shooter. He's the best shooter on the Rockets as a spot-up three. I think Ime Udoka knows how to use these players. And I think a Harden and Şengün pick and roll would be extremely lethal. So thing is, Ime is going to enforce strictness. He's going to want to, enforce things the right way to build up a culture for this young group. So James Harden's going to have to fit into that if he wants to come back, and certainly he would do that if he does want to. And Jalen Green, key point here at the end, last point here. Jalen Green was on the Paul George podcast, and he said it has benefits and weaknesses for James Harden to come back to the Houston Rockets, and I 100% agree with that because at the end of the day, it does seem like both parties want it, and I like the positive aspect of it, but Paul George said, ball dominant guard like James Harden isn't necessarily the best idea for this group, and he thinks they're on the right track with Jalen Green. So that's a good point, but I think bringing Harden back, especially if he does want to come back and put the team in these meaningful games and put them in a good position offensively, give them the ball in those situations, I think I'm all for it. And as long as it's for the right price, I think the Houston Rockets would want him at the right price as well. But Rockets fans may not like him anymore, but especially his habits, how he not delivers in the clutch. But that's different from what this move would be in terms of bringing James Harden back, because I moved on from all that. And if everything works out the right way, I still think he can positively impact this team, and I'm for it at the right price. So that's my thoughts on James Harden to Houston. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment what your thoughts are on Harden coming back potentially, and I'll see you in the next one.